Hello and welcome to spooky season. Massive disclaimer, this video is going to be very different from what I usually do because I didn't write it. What we have here are the top 12, and I've picked 12 because it's different from 10, Stephen King books. But I didn't pick these. I have read a few Stephen King books, definitely not enough to pick a top 12. So everything I say here was written by my friend Adam, who wrote a massive article for our blog, booksandbow.com. You can go read the full article. It is every Stephen King book ranked from worst to best. The link is in the description. Go read it now. I am going to be reading from that article. My phone is leaning against the camera, and hopefully it doesn't look like I'm just reading from a script, even though I've just told you that's what I'm doing. If in the comments you want to throw criticism at me, I won't take offense, because I didn't write it. Okay, these are the top 12 Stephen King books, as chosen by my dear friend Adam, who wrote the full article. Go read it. Number 12, The Shining. An unemployed recovering alcoholic finds employment as a caretaker at the remote and imposing Overlook Hotel over the deserted winter period. Jack Torrance drags his wife and son along for company, but they aren't the only guests of note. Guests who don't want the family to ever leave. An iconic story of isolation and psychosis, The Shining perfectly balances creepiness and dread via an upsetting combination of psychology and pure supernatural terror. Though, fun fact, Stephen King hated the movie. He thought that the movie took away the emotional depth that made Jack a character deserving of empathy rather than the terrifying being he became in the movie. This novel does not quite hit the lofty heights that most people believe, but it's still an excellent addition to King's dungeon of work. Oh, I like dungeon, Adam, that's really good. I edited this, I don't know why I'm surprised. It's one of the best, but not the best. That's why it's number 12. Number 11. I don't like doing man voices. Misery. An author of romance novels is driven off the road by a snowstorm breaking his legs. By coincidence, he is rescued by a nurse who can help him recover, and she also happens to be his biggest fan. And she reads the first draft of his new book, and her real personality appears. Now, I've actually read Misery. I've read Misery. It's great. It's really great. Good book. Misery is one of the lucky Stephen King novels that is as superb as the film adaptation. I haven't seen the film. Have not seen the film. Read the book, haven't seen the film. Really should. Kathy Bates won an Oscar for her role playing Annie Wilkes. I might watch it tonight. That's a great film to watch tonight. Thank you, Adam. Taking place mostly in one building, the story is claustrophobic and tense. A horror both psychological and gruesome in turn. Misery features one of King's very best villains. There are no demons here, no vampires, no ghosts, just a deranged woman with an obsession who goes to extreme methods to fuel her addiction. An excellent book, but an even better baddie. You're a good writer, Adam. Number 10, Needful Things. A new shop named Needful Things opens in the town of Castle Rock, Maine, sparking the curiosity of its citizens. The proprietor, Leland Gaunt, is a charming elderly gentleman who always seems to have an item in stock that is perfectly suited to any customer who comes through his door. I watched this Rick and Morty episode back when I watched Rick and Morty. The prices are surprisingly low considering the wondrous merchandise, but he expects each customer also to play a little prank on someone else in town. Gaunt knows about the grudges, arguments, and feuds between the various townspeople, and the pranks are his means of forcing them to escalate until the whole town is eventually caught up in madness and violence. I should read this. Sounds great. Superb stories like this are why I, Adam, am such a Stephen King fan. Leland Gaunt is a sly, horrible villain who schemes his way into the heart of a small American town. His methods are vindictive, but he radiates charisma and charm. Number 9. Pet Sematary. A family moved to a remote town with a terrible secret. The woods behind their new home has a burial ground which can bring the dead back to life, but not the same. They are changed somehow. And yes, the spelling on the cover of the title is intentional. The most famous line of this novel sticks with those who have read it. Sometimes dead is better. Yeah, I've definitely heard that before. I haven't read this one, by the way. I haven't read it. I really should. It sums up the novel very well, in fact. This is, without a doubt, one of King's scariest novels. Even as a horror fan, it's rare that I'm scared by something, but Pet Sematary scared me. But it also made me cry at one hideous and emotional moment. The idea that we can raise our loved ones when they die is something many people wish for, but this book shows that sometimes Dead is Better. A fantastic novel and the ultimate homage to the monkey's paw. Number 8, Dolores Claiborne, a book that I, Will, had never heard of before. Dolores is a crotchety old woman who has just been arrested for murder. She professes her innocence in this case, but also confesses to a different murder entirely. Through flashbacks, we see what drove Dolores from a subservient housewife to a vengeful goddess. This is one of the few King novels I didn't actively expect to enjoy. The synopsis I read sounded a bit too normal for a Stephen King book, a drama set on a small island with virtually no horror. It turns out I didn't need the horror, because what I got instead was a masterpiece. Unlike everything that I can recall that Stephen King has ever written, Dolores Claiborne is written in a first-person, conversational and colloquial style due to the plot being explained by Dolores as she is being interrogated by the police. She's abrasive and irritating and opinionated and just wonderful, laying her entire truth out for everyone to see. Her suffering has made her the way she is, but she also has a cheerful edge, as though she has fought her demons and won. This novel is an absolute delight, and one that I could read again and again. Number 7? Was this 7? 7? 11/22/63. I remember when this came out. I remember. An English teacher is shown a wormhole that leads to the late 1950s. A friend convinces him to use his time in the past to stop the assassination of JFK. Jake finds that the past may be changed for the better, but the future may not react so positively. This is another of King's novels that could be described as a modern masterpiece. 11/22/63 is one of the rare creations with no tangible horror to speak of. There is a threat and suspense, naturally, but this novel flits more between sci-fi and a period drama/thriller. A massive boon to the book is the relationship between Jake and his love interest Sadie. Both bring an incredible warmth to a novel which, rather than just being a tense thriller, becomes a romantic sensation too. The last few pages made me weep. And for a horror author to do that to me, no mean feat. A marvellous book. Adam, you really are a good writer. You should write more stuff for us. Number 6? Question mark. The Dark Tower 4, Wizard and Glass. Okay, hello, hi. I read the first 4 Dark Tower books, and in my opinion, they get worse and worse and worse, and after the 4th one, I gave up. Sorry, Adam. After narrowly escaping death once again, Roland, the gunslinger, relates a story of his past to his quartet. They are regaling the story of how Roland became the grizzled sentinel that he is. The story concerns a teenage Roland as a newly minted gunslinger and his exploits in the land of Medjus. Roland falls in love with Susan, the town beauty, though she is already promised to the most powerful man in the barony, a man who may be aligned with Roland's true enemy. If the gunslinger isn't the best of the Dark Tower novels, then it's this one, though they are very different beasts. While the first book was a lonely, introspective trudge through the desert, Wizard and Glass is a blockbuster of action, romance, and betrayal. There are battles and ritual sacrifice and arguments, all giving us not only superb entertainment, but some fascinating background on why Roland is such a bastard, although a well-meaning one. It may be that you won't love Wizard and Glass as much as I did. Yeah, no, I didn't. And it's also possible that my glasses are rose-tinted by the disappointment that came afterwards, but I absolutely adored Wizard and Glass. Good for you, Adam. I'm glad you did. And I know a lot of people did. I didn't. But this is Adam's list, not mine. Number probably 5, Skeleton Crew. The highlights of Skeleton Crew. The Jaunt, a new method of space travel is invented with just one rule, and of course, that one rule is flouted. The Raft. 4 friends are marooned on a raft too far away from dry land and something stirs in the water. Beach World. Astronauts crash onto an uncharted planet where the endless sand dunes are hypnotic and not from beauty. Survivor Type. A man is shipwrecked, alone and lost. He realizes that his survival requires a terrifying diet. Uncle Otto's Truck. A murderer's guilt manifests as a vehicle that he thinks wants to kill him, and only he can see it inching closer to him. Skeleton Crew is an absolute belter of a short story collection. Some of the stories here are devastating in terms of horror, but also have great variety. The pinnacle of this collection is undoubtedly The Jaunt, one of King's rare steps into science fiction, a story of unthinkable psychological torment for a man and his family that chilled me to my core. There are a few duds in here involving a teenage sniper and a mafia wedding, and one particularly bad pair of stories called The Milkman 1 and 2, but for the most part Skeleton Crew is a huge triumph. Number 4. The Stand. A virus is accidentally unleashed, killing 99% of the population of the United States. As for the rest of the world, who knows? Those who survive are thrust into a war between the Holy Mother Abigail and the tyrannical Randall Flagg. Armies will grow and battles will commence, the winner gaining dominion over the scorched earth that remains. Opinions vary, but it is often accepted that if King has a magnum opus, it is either the 4,500 pages that make up the entire Dark Tower series, or the 1,000 plus pages of The Stand, a grand thesis on morality, survival, and the violence that comes with it. The influence of The Stand can be seen in many media sources such as The Walking Dead and 28 Days Later, most of them never coming close to the level of mastery, except The Last of Us. Adam mentions The Last of Us, the game. Like much of King's work, The Stand gives us an incredible rogues gallery, some of the best and most varied villains in literature. From the psychic lunacy of Flagg, the wild and erratic and wonderfully named Garbage Can Man, to the seething, entitled petulance of some of our betrayers. The Stand is King's masterwork, and even though there are a couple of books I like better, this one is probably superior in quality. Number 3, The Dark Tower 1, The Gunslinger. I've read this one. I've read this one. It's real good. I also like how short it is. Punchy. A lone knight has dedicated himself to capturing the sorcerer who brought destruction to his family. His long journey begins here in the desert, but where will it end? Another of King's novels with some infamous quotes sprinkled throughout. The Gunslinger is the first in what is considered his maybe magnum opus, The Dark Tower. A sprawling fantasy epic featuring a Wild West setting, parallel worlds, mutants, and a talking train, and eventually a cameo by Stephen King himself. The Dark Tower novels are sometimes staggering and sometimes messy, but slow and purposeful, The Gunslinger is one of the 2 Dark Tower novels to be considered an absolute masterpiece. A mature story that pulls no punches when it comes to plot and characters, and the first one is still the best. Number 2, Duma Key. A business owner experiences a devastating workplace accident resulting in a brain injury and the loss of his arm. Edgar retires to a remote beachside hut to recuperate and take up painting and create masterpieces. He soon realizes that the work he is creating is not just ethereal and haunting, but also seems to be painted by an arm he no longer has attached to his body. His work becomes more and more disturbing, eventually unleashing a force that could destroy everything he loves. This sounds mental. I haven't read this one. Duma Key is the best Stephen King novel. Numero uno, the big kahuna, Adam. I kept this in. This was a gigantic surprise for me for multiple reasons. One is that Duma Key was released in 2008. King is considered by many to be an author whose glory days are behind him. A lot of King's recent work varies between decent to bad, as you can see in the rest of the list, which you should go read. It's in the description. Another reason is that Duma Key is one of his lesser-known works, rather than a household name like The Shining. But none of that matters. Duma Key is a masterpiece of horror, drama, and sometimes comedy. It is emotional and mature, fully deserving of its place at the top of the heap. But his best novel is not his best work. That honor belongs to the single greatest collection of short stories of any genre that I, Adam, have ever read. And that is number 1, Night Shift. Here it is, the single best thing that Stephen King has ever created. If you don't read this book and love it, Stephen King probably isn't for you, and that's fine. Night Shift is a staggering work of genius, featuring some of the most incredible short stories I've ever experienced. I'll mention some standouts, but these stories are so wonderful that I don't want to risk spoilers, so these will be pretty vague. The Ledge. A cuckold forces his wife's lover at gunpoint to circumnavigate the penthouse of a skyscraper via the 5-inch outside ledge. A wager is struck. If he survives, he gets to stay with the woman he loves forever. If he refuses or he fails... Adam wrote ... there. Graveyard Shift. Colleagues at a factory decide to take the midnight overtime shift. the cleaning of the abandoned basement, now home to rats, and other things. The Lawnmower Man. A gardener is employed by a client to mow his lawn, but he has a few unusual rules. So I watched the film with Pierce Brosnan, which is from like 1990, maybe earlier. Is that to do with this story? Adam, let me know in the comments. Quitters Inc. A company advertises a way of beating any addiction and boasts a 98% success rate. But their methods of curing the addiction may not be ethical. Short story collections tend to be erratic in quality, as is their nature. Not every idea hits the mark, especially when you're talking about collections of 20 stories or more. But Night Shift has only one dud, which is called I Know What You Need. Naturally, some of the stories are better than others, but this is the most consistent collection I've ever encountered. Some of these stories are flat-out masterpieces. There's a story about sentient trucks murdering people, and even with a balmy plot like that, it still manages to be terrifying and incredible. I cannot put into words just how strong of an impression this collection had on me. I genuinely don't expect to read any short story collection like this for the rest of my life. Okay, that was Adam's top 12 Stephen King books. Once again, go read the full Stephen King books ranked worst to best article linked in the description. I also want to point out that Books and Bow is full of great articles for you to read, and a lot of my viewers don't realize that I have a blog, and the blog is actually the main thing that I do. And I do sometimes hire writers to write stuff for me, like this one. Thank you, Adam. Okay. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, go read the article, join my Patreon if you have money to spare and you love what I do, and subscribe for books.